I want to introduce to you Stephen Bianca. And Stephen is the coordinator, accessibility, and LMS administration serving Florida Southwestern State College. And this is located in Fort Myers. He is from the college's Office of Information Technology. He's been there since 2018. And he works closely, I keep doing that, don't I? He works closely with the Office of Adaptive Services, Teaching and Learning Center, the e-learning, and other areas. He holds a bachelor's degree of applied sciences in supervision and management from FSW, Florida Southwest College, and has been with the college for 15 years. His work really centers on web accessibility, e-learning content, assistive technologies, and providing resources and guidance to promote increased access. And then prior to working for OIT, he served on the college's library services as a library systems specialist, integrating technologies for improved library services and workflows. So Stephen, welcome. And we appreciate you taking time to share with the CCT Club High School Club sponsors and the FPCTP support people that are here on preparing now for accommodations in assistive technology in college. I'm going to stop sharing and let you share your screen.
Thank you so much, Iris. So let me get my screen sharing up here. Hopefully everyone's able to hear me well. Thank you for the introduction. Yes, I'm Stephen Bianco, and I'm with Florida Southwestern State College in Fort Myers, Florida, although I physically live in Arcadia, Florida, in DeSoto County. Welcome to preparing now for accommodations and assistive technology in college. I prepared some brief slides. I know that this presentation was only scheduled for 45 minutes and it has some time for questions at the end. So I want to make sure I respect everyone's time with this kind of short presentation. So just as a general disclosure, as with any software that's discussed, you want to make sure that you perform virus scans, especially with free and open source software. Make sure that it is acceptable or that you have administrative permission to install or implement programs onto your computer, and to be sure to read the terms and conditions carefully, even though they are quite long. But the information is as is, and it's for the purposes of education and to kind of give you some research direction. So as Iris had mentioned with my introduction, I do deal a lot with Canvas course content accessibility, document accessibility. For the college, review accessibility documentation for the different vendors to ensure that we are adopting accessible programs and softwares, whether they are cloud-based or application-based from the get-go, and deal a lot with our website accessibility for our public-facing and internal websites. So an overview at a glance, we're going to look at assistive technologies. We're going to see how the Universal Design for Learning framework can help assist us in preparing our lessons and our materials for students with unique abilities, some quick takeaways, and time for questions. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the term assistive technologies, it's defined as any item, piece of equipment, software program, or product system that is used to increase, maintain, or improve functional capacities or capabilities of persons with disabilities. And so we're going to kind of just look at some of the assistive technologies that are free and also high cost, the premium ones, to kind of give a general overview of what's available. First is not so much an assistive technology, but a great way of organizing content, and that would be through the use of graphic organizers. You know, they're visual representations of how concepts interconnect or have relationships with each other. And that can be very helpful, you know, for everyone in a learning situation where, you know, you're trying to give like a high level overview, but you can also use these graphic organizers as kind of a template and leave space available to have students or learners fill in the blanks. And so why I bring it up is the use of graphic organizers relates to the Universal Design for Learning framework. And I have the specific checkpoints listed on the slide. And really, they are quite easy to create, especially within Microsoft Office. There is the ability to create smart art, and that feature has been available since 2007 and their 2007 version. And smart art is how I've created these pretty graphics on my slides, and they're all text-based. So when I actually export this presentation as a PDF, all of the text is readable to screen readers and other assistive technologies. So they're a really great way of providing a little bit of flair and a little bit of color into presentations. And I think they're a really great way of organizing concepts as well. With I know that there are many different software platforms available out there. I'm not going to name names, but some of them aren't the most accessible in terms of being able to create graphic organizers or some sort of graphics. And so it's always best when we're looking at selecting any sort of software or web-based product for authoring content that goes out to students, we should be very aware of asking the vendor for their accessibility information. That way you can kind of plan ahead any accommodations that may be necessary. You know, if there's one program that doesn't support screen readers, or, you know, it relies heavily on dragging and dropping, but you can't necessarily use a keyboard to perform those same actions, then a different product might be better to consider. So you're opening it up for everyone. So when I was thinking about assistive technologies for individuals with unique abilities, the first thing that came to my mind was note-taking, right? And so personally, I love Microsoft OneNote. It is a free application, and it has a mobile app component to it, and a web side available. So it's really an online notebook that you can access from any device, and you don't necessarily need any particular operating system or hardware to access it. And OneNote, you can upload audio recordings, you can upload videos to it, take notes. If you're taking notes while recording audio, it will timestamp where you were typing, where and when you were typing within that recording. So when you click on a section of text, it will bring you right to the recorded section of that. You can also, of course, go back to the handy dandy pen and paper, but you can digitize it through using Microsoft Office Lens, which is a free application. And when you digitize your notes, you can then save them as PDFs, you can convert them to Word documents or PowerPoint presentations using Microsoft Lens. So it's kind of a handy tool. And along with the ability to essentially snap a picture of your handwritten notes, Microsoft Lens comes integrated with Immersive Reader, which is a fantastic product and service that Microsoft offers that is free. It's also integrated with numerous educational technology apps. And the list is just growing. And then, there are the more traditional assistive technologies that, are typically provided by colleges and universities, like LiveScribe pens that, students are actually taking notes on paper with this special device, and it does the digitizing so they can open it up in a digital form on their computer. It also does audio recording. And then there's Sonocent that provides audio note taker, and they have a new product called Glean that is kind of just a recording software to record what's going on within the lecture. Glean is a little bit easier to use, and students can upload PowerPoint slides and take notes during a presentation. But those are higher costs. So for all of these different assistive technologies, I figured I'd approach it from the free or low cost and the high cost perspectives. And high cost is anything greater than free, right? So the next typical accommodation and assistive technology that students can expect is speech to text. If they have difficulty typing due to mobility issues, or they kind of just prefer to talk, right? They can get their words out, they can express themselves a lot easier by speaking. Speech to text comes in as a great way of authoring papers and other things that they need to do within their coursework. And so here, many institutions have a subscription to Microsoft Office 365, and there's so many tools that we can take advantage of that they kind of are hidden in plain sight, I like to say. They're right there in front of you, but if you don't know to look for it, you're not going to see it. And so one of the fun features for speech to text within Microsoft Office is the ability to dictate. And many times that's on the Home tab of the ribbon within many of the different Microsoft products, namely Word and PowerPoint and Outlook. Also, if you are not a Microsoft Office 365 institution, but instead you have a G Suite account, Google Drive offers the ability to transcribe, or you can dictate within the browser to type a Google Doc or a Google Slides presentation. Also, just interesting to point out, Microsoft Teams has been doing a lot with artificial intelligence and transcription. And so there is live transcription available within Microsoft Teams, which to my knowledge is also free to access. And then just a side thing, there's so many different services out there, but one that really caught my attention is Web Captioner. Web Captioner is free. You speak, it types it out for you, and then you can save a text or a Word document file of everything that you said. And you can even connect it with meeting softwares such as Zoom and other meeting platforms, but I know Zoom is pretty popular. In terms of the higher cost solutions that are more traditional, there's Dragon speech recognition. And not only is it speech recognition, but it can do some control functions to help you navigate with the computer and what's on screen. There's Otter.ai transcription, which I know Zoom uses on a backend for their live transcription service. And Verbit.ai is also an artificial intelligent speech to text transcription service that can do live cart and other captioning projects. And of course, the Zoom live transcription, which is powered by Otter AI. And then going from the reverse. So instead of speech to text, we have text to speech. And that can benefit everyone. When I talk about both speech to text and text to speech, I try to explain it as these were assistive technologies almost exclusively before the advent of our smart home devices and our smartphones. Because if we are talking to one of our smart home or smart assistants, they are using speech to text to recognize what they need to be looking for. And then once they find the information for you, then they utilize text to speech from the computer perspective to announce back what results they have found, or whether it be the time of day or what's the next thing on my meeting agenda. So we're seeing a lot of assistive technologies coming into the mainstream, which I think is so exciting. So with text to speech, there are some great free products out there. One that is application based that you can install is Balabolka. I've heard of it being used throughout the state for testing accommodations where a human reader or reading needs are available or needed. And so some institutions are using Balabolka, which is a free and open source software that does text to speech. It can even save audio files of the speech output so people can listen to things on the go. And also it's important to note here that almost all of our devices actually have a built-in screen reader and some level of built-in accessibility functionality. So like Windows has Microsoft Narrator as the built-in screen reader that comes straight out of the box with any Windows installation. Macintosh and Mac smart devices have VoiceOver, and Android has a screen reader called TalkBack. So there's a lot of built-in accessibility with our different operating systems and devices that we might not know about. Another text-to-speech tool, which is, I'm typically not an Internet Explorer person, but the new Microsoft Edge browser, which is based off of the same code base as Google Chrome, is a wonderful browser. The Microsoft Edge browser has text-to-speech built into it. So it's not an extra extension that you have to keep track of or download or update. And for many web pages, Edge even integrates natively Immersive Reader, which is a fantastic product that will change your web page into a very easily readable, it'll remove the clutter of ads and extraneous images, and it will allow you to resize the text, have the text read aloud, and you can even have access to a visual dictionary, translate the page, and resize and customize your display. And that may be super helpful to point out to students that that's available. And then for those who need a screen reader, or even those who want to test out what a screen reader is like and to test their content against it, non-visual desktop access, or NVDA, is available for Windows. Of course, Macintosh VoiceOver is free and built in, and a industry standard screen reader. But non-visual desktop access rivals Job Access with Speech. It's a unique screen reader because they, the creators of NVDA are blind, and they made the screen reader for blind individuals. And it's very, very good. I like using it to test out content. It has some features within it, such as the speech output, so I can see the text of what the synthesizer is reading rather than listening to it, which saves me a little bit of extra listening time, because I'm not listening to it quite as quickly as probably most people. On the higher cost spectrum of things, we have Job Access with Speech, or JAWS, which is also a gold standard screen reader for Microsoft Windows. There's Kurzweil 3000. It's not a screen reader, but it is a text-to-speech software. It will essentially recognize the text within documents that are scanned to it, and provide it with a synthesized voice. The read and write tools do similar functions as Kurzweil, but read and write has kind of a really cool tool called Equatio that's free for educators, and it converts mathematical screenshots into mathematical notation that can be read aloud. And then these are super neat. They are scanning pens, and what the scanning pens do, they're the size of a highlighter, essentially, and you press it and scroll it across the text on a printed book, and they accept headphones, but if you didn't have headphones, it'll just read it aloud with a built-in speaker. And they have all sorts of different scanning pens. They have a dictionary pen, an exam pen, and just a reader pen. And the dictionary pen can actually translate words that it's recognized in text into different languages, and also translate different languages into, say, English. So those are the different assistive technologies that are out there that you can take advantage of. Going into Universal Design for Learning, which is developed by the Center for Applied Special Technology, or CAST, and they have an excellent framework that applies various principles of neuroscience to make learning available and accessible to everyone. So if you're unfamiliar with the Universal Design for Learning framework, I'm just going to provide the relevant points. And it's important to note here that each of these, I've seen you can play UDL tic-tac-toe for your lesson planning, where you kind of pick one under each column. And of course, it's always good to try to do as many as you can, but not all of the different framework checkpoints are necessary. So it's a good way of doing some simple lesson planning and dipping your toes into universal design for learning. So one of the first principles is multiple means of engagement. And under that, there are the guidelines and then the checkpoints. And I have linked the checkpoints so you can access the information directly from their website so I don't misquote anything. But when we're designing lessons, it's good to provide the options for recruiting interest through reducing threats and distractions within the classroom, providing options for sustaining effort and persistence. So making the goals and the objectives of the learning very clear and understandable for everyone, as well as varying the demands of the challenge. You know, some people might not be, you know, top of the class quite yet. And so you can provide supplemental information to help them move up. And that's kind of what a lot of adaptive learning platforms do. They will kind of get a baseline reading of what it feels your benchmark or your baseline knowledge is, and then it will ask you questions related to the concepts to get you to the point of mastery and at the level as everyone else within that course. And it's very important to provide mastery-oriented feedback and frequent feedback to ensure that people are, you know, doing what they need to be doing. So feedback, I feel, is, you know, the key thing when we're teaching, because we want to get that information out there. We want our students to succeed, and they can only do that through constructive and feedback that's going to focus them on the goals and the objectives. Also providing options for self-regulation. Of course, we want to ensure that the students are motivated, and we can do that through optimizing our content to make it more relevant to their life situations and, you know, possibly current events that are going on that may affect them. Facilitate personal coping skills and strategies, and definitely self-assessment and reflection. We certainly learn more when we reflect on our experiences and our learning. The second principle is multiple means of representation. And that's a lot of times where our assistive technology comes in, right? So we are taking speech and we're converting it to text, possibly for captioning. That's a different representation of audio, or audio that's contained within a video. So we are looking to provide options for perception, to help with the decoding of language and symbols, and to promote comprehension with our materials. Again, I don't want it to be exhaustive, so these links are all available within the handouts for today's presentation that you are more than welcome to take and share and utilize to get a better understanding of what each of these checkpoints mean and how they define it at CAST. And then the final principle is multiple means of action and expression. And so in taking a course on universal design for learning, it was really interesting to kind of see how, like, especially within the STEM or STEAM courses, how you can really get a lot of engagement and actual, like, physical expression of different things within the sciences and math. Like you have manipulatives for math. And one video that was striking, it was a lesson on kind of calculating the total amount of sugar intake from sodas. And within that, the students needed to look at nutrition labels and calculate that. So doing the actual mathematical part. And then as part of that, they also needed to show it visually. So they were given a huge thing of sugar and they needed to spoon out the actual amount of sugar intake that they calculated to see it visually, but also to physically see that representation themselves. And I think one of the big areas here is providing the options for executive functioning. So we want to make sure that students are on task, and we can do that through goal setting and planning and strategy development, as well as providing information and resources at the right time or repeating support information to help kind of reiterate that within the lesson. And also to have them, again, self-monitor or monitor their progress, and also provide a way to monitor that progress. So, quick takeaways. I was kind of researching how we can better develop content, and it really was exciting because there was recent guidance from the World Wide Web Consortium on making content usable for people with cognitive and learning disabilities. So they're fairly easy to integrate. I have the link to the source document that provides better explanations, but we can kind of see here, I'm chunking my information throughout this presentation. In many spots, I'm using intentional graphics as signposts. So there, I'm kind of looking at the third point of use clear content, text, images, and media. But we also need to ensure that we are helping users understand what things are and how to use them. So that's kind of going back to that multiple means of representation. Help users find what they need. That's that last point that we just kind of talked about, where we want to supply the support and the resources just in time, or at least repeat it. So it's always present as a resource, especially if we're looking at online courses where the instructor isn't present, or for any online resources where students may not be as tech savvy. We also want to help users avoid making mistakes. This is more to do with actual like web forms and providing clear labels, clear indication that maybe the content that was provided has an error, and clear error messages that actually state what the user needs to do with that form. But I think that we can certainly apply that within the educational setting as well to help users avoid making mistakes by being proactive with our planning. We also want to help users focus. Normally, what I do for my virtual background is I throw on the blur background, which is a great way of focusing attention, I guess, on me, but it takes out my bookshelf in the background and just makes it blurry. So there's nothing else distracting. So that's one way, especially within online sessions, I try to help users focus, is with my virtual background having a blur effect behind me. Ensure processes do not rely solely on memory. So, I mean, I know that's kind of the point of learning, right? Is to make sure that there is some recall to what we are going about doing, but I think it also kind of works with help users avoid making mistakes. So we want to be clear of the expectations and providing good written instructions as well as verbal instruction, and that will help reinforce what is expected. Of course, providing help and support, and support adaptation and personalization. That's kind of where the immersive reader comes in for any text content, because the users can create the display that they prefer with background colors and text colors, font size, etc. So with that, like I said, I'm trying to keep this very short to maintain time, but are there any questions? Oh wait, let's see here.
Stephen, you have one question in the chat box right now. And boy, have you given us some great ideas for some, to use and adapt materials. Cynthia Binkelmolder, and I apologize if I badgered that name, your last name. She asked, can you explain how to find the dictation in a word?
Absolutely. Let me pull up Word real quick and get it onto the monitor that I'm sharing. I am using Word from Microsoft Office 365. So I'm just going to open up a blank document here. And on my home ribbon, as we can see, there's Dictate. And you can select the language that you are dictating in. So say you are speaking French, you would want to select French. And then when you select Dictate, then you can start speaking French, and it will ensure that it is picking up those words properly. Of course, I do not know any current foreign languages. So, unfortunately, Latin is not on my list of choices here. So I'm just primarily going to be speaking in English, United States. And when I click on Dictate, it should start picking up what I'm saying on the Word document. It'll start typing wherever the cursor is placed within the document. And the same goes for the dictate feature within PowerPoint. So if you wanted to speak your slide notes, you would place your cursor within the slide notes section and then select Dictate, and then begin speaking after you hear the tone and see the icon change to this kind of little recording symbol on the microphone. And once you're done dictating, then you simply press the button again. It looks like it's a keyboard shortcut of Alt plus apostrophe. And then it will stop dictating for you. It should be on the Home tab for the most recent versions of Microsoft Office. For older versions, you may need to take a look at Microsoft Help just to make sure you're in the appropriate location. And this is the desktop application of Word. It is also available, however, in the online version of Word, and the online version of Word even has a more fantastic feature called Transcribe, where you can upload audio files such as MP3s or WMAs and have that transcribed for you, and you can insert that transcription within your Word document. So that's only available for Microsoft Word Online, but Dictate's available both on the installed application and their web-based application. And again, that's just on the Home tab.
I had no clue.
I know.
That is very cool. Yeah.
That's why I always say, like, you know, there's so much built into these programs that are just hidden in plain sight, right? Like the ability to search for YouTube videos with appropriate captioning. It's hidden in plain sight. There's a filter button after you search for a term in YouTube. And when you hit that filter button, you can select closed caption, and it'll list all of the videos where the closed captions have been edited from the auto-generated captions.
Any other questions for Stephen? Mark says it's very informative today. I agree. You've given us a wealth of information. Gina says, this is fantastic. I can see multiple applications in the classroom. And again, his PowerPoint, his presentation is in the Whova app under Documents, and you can use that. You can upload that and use his links and get to those hyperlinks and those materials that he has provided us. Okay. Any other questions for Stephen? Stephen, go ahead.
While we're waiting in questions, here are the references that I used for this particular presentation. And if you want to link with me or connect with me on LinkedIn or shoot me an email, here's my contact information.
Fabulous. And I like that you have the QR code there.
Yeah, I started using that, especially for these virtual presentations, because everyone's really close to their screen, so it's easy for them to scan it on their phones.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We truly appreciate you being here today.